Alright, so what you should have, guys, again, you should have just a blank piece of paper. We're going to be using this as scrap just to kind of test things out. You need to have your worksheet, okay? What we're going to do is we're going to just learn how to shade a couple different ways. So I'm going to show you guys some techniques on how to do that. And then you need 3 different kinds of pencils. So you need, let me see here, you need a 4H, so you need to make sure it says 4H on the, it'll be at the very end of the pencil. You need a 3B pencil and a 6B pencil. And then you need just a regular pink eraser, and then you'll need one of these gray kneaded erasers. Now, if you need to sharpen your pencil, I'll give you a minute here to sharpen your pencils if you need to. Try not to, and I kind of sharpen these a little too much. If you can look at this, it's kind of hard to see. But if you look at this, I probably have too much of a sharpened pencil. When you sharpen your pencils, kind of sharpen them so they're a bit dull, so it's just enough that it's exposing the lead, and I'll show you why that's important here in a minute. So I'm going to give you guys just a minute to sharpen your pencils, and then we'll get started. All right, so let's get this set up. Make sure your name is on your worksheet, so if you haven't done it already, put your name on there. Okay. And then what I want you guys to do, okay, I want you to put your, and this is just what I do, and everybody can do it a little bit differently, but I like to put my pencils in my opposite hand in order from lightest to darkest. I'm going to put my 4H pencil here first, then I'm going to put my 3B pencil in the middle, and then my 6B pencil right after that. And this helps me, I don't know, saves me time because then I'm not reading the pencils all the time and figure out which one I've got in my hand, but it just keeps them in order. So, all right, so right now what I want you guys to do, I want you to grab your 4H pencil, okay? I'm going to try to zoom this in here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a really good edge to shade with, and with how sharp this pencil is, it's not a good edge to shade with. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to take, if you kind of look at when I do this, if you see, it just looks too liney. When I shade, I want it to look nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to sand down that point until I get something that looks like this. Okay? Rather than the lines. So what I want you to do right now is take your scrap piece of paper, and I want you to kind of sand down the edge, and you got to keep your pencil in your handle, same way. But just sand it down until it looks like this. We don't want the lines, we want that. Okay? Now with the 4H's, because it's the H pencil, and it's lighter and it's a harder lead, it takes a little bit longer to get that edge. When we do the 3B or 3B pencil and the 6B, you'll notice that that goes a lot faster. Okay? All right. So if you look at this worksheet, the direction says to create a value scale using graphite pencils. So do not smudge your marks with your finger. Okay? That's one big pet peeve I have with shading. A lot of people think to blend, they need to stick their finger over top their graphite, but what happens is that you blur it all out and it just looks like a puffy cloud, okay? You don't want to lose that structure in your shading. So do not use your finger. The other thing is to don't go and grab a tissue, like a Kleenex, and wrap it around your finger and then smudge again over all your shading. Because again, you'll find that it'll look really cloudy, it'll look smudgy, it'll just look very fuzzy. You'll lose all that structure. So whatever you do, do not rub in with your finger or a tissue over your graphite. The next sentence says, remember to include gradation in seamless and equal amounts throughout the entire scale. So if you guys look, I have, and it's kind of blurry up here at the top, I have a grayscale right here. So over here, this is going to be our lightest value. What's nice about that, it's already done for us, so we don't have to do anything about that. So we're going to go from the lightest value, which is white, all the way to the darkest value, which is black. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my 4H pencil again, And what I would do is just watch me for just a little bit until you feel like you got the idea, and then you can start. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start over here on the dark side. I feel like I'm talking about Star Wars. So you're going to start over here on the dark side. If you notice, I am going side to side with my shading. And I'm doing just a really light layer. Make sure I kind of get in these corners. Craftsmanship, guys, is always a big deal in this class, so make sure that you're staying within that shape. You do not want it to look messy around there. And I'm just going to take this basically all the way down towards the medium light section. And while I'm doing this, what I don't want to see is I don't want it to look patchy, okay? This could be kind of hard to see. I don't want it to look patchy. So if it does start to look patchy, what I do is I kind of work in those areas to fix it. I'm just doing it very lightly. Now you might be curious, okay, well this is the dark side. Why are we not going ahead and plugging in the dark value now? You could do it that way. I think it's important to say that there's more than one way to do something. This is the way that I have found that has worked best for me. I can better assess what's going on and what I need to do. If I do it this way, build it up gradually. The other thing is, too, is that you will find that the H pencils, their color looks different than the B pencils because it's just a different kind of lead. And a lot of times it can look too different. So by putting my 4H pencil under my B pencil layers, I will make sure that they are unified. It looks like it all belongs. So what I'm going to do, again, on this light end, I'm not going to put any graphite on there. I am leaving that white, okay? I don't want any pencil in that area whatsoever. So as I get to this area, I am going to lighten up my pressure so that my pencil is really, really light. So this is just as much about what pencil you're using as with the pressure that you're using with it, okay? So you want it to look lighter, just lighten up your pressure. Barely touch that paper. So after I get down and I stop where I want to stop, I stopped right in between the light and medium light, so about right here is where I stopped. And again, I really lightened up the pressure when I got here so that it's like barely there. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 4H pencil, I'm just going to go back through and fill in any patches that I have. Now, when I'm over here on the dark side, I can add a bit more pressure because that is going to get really dark after all. Okay. So once I finish that layer 4H, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this back in my hand and I'm going to make sure I put it in order again so I can keep track of what I've got. Now I'm going to grab my 3B, which is my next darkest value in pencil, okay? Because the 6B is my darkest. Because remember, higher the number goes on the B side, the darker the pencil, okay? So I'm going to grab the 3B. Before I use it, I'm going to, again, give myself a nice edge to shade with. So again, when you start, you'll see that you've got just a lot of line. You don't want that. So I'm going to just kind of sand that down on this scrap piece of paper until I have a nice, smooth edge to shade with, like that. Okay, so no on the lines, yes on this second one. Once I've got my 3B pencil prepped and ready to go, I'm going to, again, start on the dark side. And I'm going to just start very lightly. Now, one thing that's important to understand with the graphite pencils, especially with shading, is that even though we're using a pencil, it doesn't mean if I make a mistake I can just go back and erase it. So, because what happens is when you build up the layers like this, it's almost impossible to erase. So, you want to make sure that you're really controlling what you're doing. So I'm just doing a light layer. And I'm going to stop this about probably at the medium. So give it a good layer of the 3B. And again, when I'm ready to kind of transition out, I'm going to lighten up my pressure. So I'm not going to push down on that pencil as much. So what's neat about these pencils is that even just with one pencil, you can give yourself a variety of values just by varying the amount of pressure that you use. Once I kind of do that first layer, almost to the medium here, enough. There. Now I'm going to go back to the dark again, and I'm going to just kind of fill in these gaps that I might have. So anything that just looks a little patchy, I'm going to fill in those lighter areas. Okay, so now I'm going to put my 3B pencil away, back in my hands. Now I'm going to grab the 6B, which is my darkest pencil. Again, I always start off by giving myself a nice edge to shade with, so I don't want, these lines. I want a nice smooth edge. And again, you'll notice that it goes a lot faster prepping the edge of your pencil with the B's, just because they're softer. So it doesn't take as long. So now, what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to start here in this dark area, and I am going to really put down the pressure. So this is my 6B. This is my darkest pencil, and I want this end here where it says dark to be as dark as possible. And the only way I'm going to make it pretty dark is if I put a lot of pressure down on the pencil, and I layer it up. So if you notice, now I'm using my pencil up and down, so I'm going vertical. So I'm crossing over my lines. That'll help make it darker. So I'm going side to side and top to bottom. And then I just kind of drag it out. And I'm going to take this probably about, I'm going to guess, I'm going to stop it right after or right to the left of where it says medium dark. And when I want to transition to those lighter values, again, I lighten up my pressure so I'm not pressing down as hard. Now, just because I've kind of got it started there, doesn't mean that I'm finished. So now what I'm going to do, I'm definitely going to go back here to the dark side. I feel like, again, I'm talking about Star Wars. I'm going to go in and just add more layers. I want this really, really, really dark. I want to get this as black as I can. And again, it's all going to be about layers, pressure, and then I'll just continue to work on blending all this out. And you guys can use the scale that's right above there as sort of a reference. So when you're trying to figure out, okay, do I have enough? Does it look good? Do I need to make this area darker? Just look right above there and compare it to that. Now I know that's inked. It's been photocopied too, so it's not the same color gray, but it can help. So again, always try to keep everything nice and clean, always looking good. Craftsmanship should always be a focus. So I'm just continuing to, you'll find you'll spend a lot of your time over here on the dark side. Now depending on what you need to do, switch back and forth between your pencils. You know, so now I'm gonna use my 3B and kind of focus here on the middle, blending that out. I'll probably go back to the 4H at some point. And again, keep those pencils in order. I get confused a lot. And always make sure you're starting with a nice edge with your pencil. So prep your pencils. I'm going to show you guys a little trick, and it's going to be probably hard to see on the screen, so I'll show you this here. So on my worksheet, right here, especially where I'm trying to just kind of like transition from the lightest value I can possibly make in white, I've got a little bit of an edge right there. So a little trick, and I'll show you guys these. These are called Kneaded Erasers, okay? Even though it says in the name is eraser, it doesn't actually erase completely away anything. And I'll show you what it does here after I open this package. Okay, so you need to take the plastic off of it, and it's just everybody go ahead and do this just so you can see what it does. We'll do this on our scrap piece of paper. So I'm going to take my 6B pencil, and I'm going to just really lay down some pencil here, some graphite. A lot of pressure, so it's really dark. Okay? So let's say, for example, I made an area too dark, and I need to lighten it up. Okay? You do not want to use the pink eraser. The pink eraser is the eraser you use when you wanted to try to erase something completely away. And again, sometimes, like, I would not be able to do that in this area right here. I've got too many layers, so I can't erase the whole thing away. But what I can do is lighten stuff up, and that's what this eraser does. Okay? It lightens up. It does not erase away. It lightens up. So what you can do is you can feel it. You can mold it into any shape you need. I actually used this on that self-portrait I did, or not self-portrait, the portrait I did of my daughter. She had some light highlights in her hair. I actually used a kneaded eraser, and all I did was kind of really squeezed it so it was really thin like this, and I erased out those highlights with the kneaded eraser. So what you can do is you take, and if you feel it's kind of sticky. So what you do, you don't use it like a regular eraser where you go side to side like this, rubbing it against the paper. What you do is you pick up. So I'll show you. You can see how light that's getting. So what it does is it picks up any loose layers of graphite on the top. And then you'll see it'll make your eraser dirty. All you do when you want to just take more off is expose a new area, and again lift it up. So as you can see, I mean, I just lightened that up probably by 3 or 4 shades. Okay, so it's a great tool to have if you make something too dark and need to lighten it. For me, in this area right here where I can see where my pencil ended, I'm going to use it to help me blend out to the white. So I am going to just, again, expose a new area, and I'm just going to kind of tap, tap, tap over that edge. And then there you go. So again, I just kind of, and that's how I'll blend out to the white. Now I can't necessarily do that. I wouldn't try to do that anywhere around here because you'll get like a spot. Because I'm blending out to white, it works out well. All right, so what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to give you guys the rest of the period to tidy up these gradated scales. I've got a 3B in my hand. I will tell you guys, some of the little tricks that I've learned is even an area where it's kind of darker, if I'm having a hard time blending stuff out, the pencil I like to use for that, I'll use my 4H as like a blender. So rather than taking my finger or a Kleenex and blending that out and smudging it all over, I'm going to take my 4H pencil, even in a darker area, and I'll use it as like a blending tool. And it works really well. And then that way too, you still have the structure there. So check your work. Make sure, guys, that you have made that dark area as dark as you possibly can with as many layers and as much pressure as you can put down on that pencil. That is probably one area that I mark off on these worksheets quite a lot, just because the dark isn't dark enough. Now, if you are interested in just learning how to shade and stuff, again, there's a million different ways you can do this. There's lots of YouTube videos out there that you guys can watch. There are a lot of artists who like to go ahead and start with their darkest value, and they'll take their 6B or their highest B pencil that they've got, go in, make that real black, and then just blend it out by varying the pressure. And then there's other people who are like me that start light and build up. So it's all just personal preference. It's all just about, and the only way you're going to figure out what works well for you is you just practice. Now I do, I'm going to put, I have a finished worksheet up, or done, kind of, yeah. And I'll put that up on the board, so if you want to, you can kind of compare yours to mine and just see what you think. Might help you. I don't know, it's probably just still a little bit on the light side. It needs to be darker. Alright, so I'm going to give you guys the rest of the time here to finish up this scale. You can also take your eraser and kind of clean up around here if you've got any areas. I'm going to use my pencil eraser. Areas that need to be cleaned up around. Just got to make it nice and clean. And now that you got all those layers too, be careful about putting your fingers on top of there because it does pull off. So you'll get pencil all over your fingers. All right, so tomorrow will be all about the sphere.